are some of the things that, like, how do you know it's a oligopoly model? And the answer to that question is you look at something called the industry concentration ratio, and if the dominant firms in the industry control the industry, if there's like 2 to 8 firms that basically control 60 to 70% of the market, then it's an oligopoly. Okay, so check. Okay, we know it's an oligopoly. Question number 2 that we went over last time is how are these oligopolies formed? And the number 1 answer would be they're formed because of these things called economies of scale. In other words, the bigger companies are more efficient, so they can charge lower prices, and because of that, the smaller companies can't compete with them. So that's called economies of scale. So that's like the number 1 reason why there's, the bigger firms dominate. And that's what oligopoly models are. The bigger firms are dominating over little firms. Okay? And so the other way that oligopolies can arise is through this concept of mergers. And these mergers are ways that you get 2 companies in the same industry that are competing for the same customer, and they merge together. And that's called a horizontal merger, and that just makes the market share of that one company bigger. And sometimes that works and it helps companies out, like we did an example of Adidas and Reebok, where they merged and they actually got worse. It didn't help them at all. So sometimes you'd say, oh, that sounds like antitrust violation because we're becoming more like a monopoly in that industry, which isn't legal. But sometimes it really doesn't even matter. They can both fight for second place and it doesn't help at all. So you don't really know like the results of these mergers before they happen, but sometimes they have to be approved by the government, the Department of Justice, or the SEC or the Federal Reserve Bank, and because they're anti-competitive. And then there's the other types of mergers that we went over as well. Okay, so then the third reason why these oligopolies come about is this concept of ownership of scarce resources. And that was when I gave the example of like De Beers controlling all the diamonds in the world. Okay, if you have diamonds on your property, or you have access to diamond mines and you own it, then a company called De Beers is going to come and they're going to try to buy those diamonds, buy your land from you so that they can continue to control the diamonds, the diamond supplier around the world. So that would be an ownership of scarce resources. And a production technique would be another way that a company gains market power and eventually controls the industry. I was talking to one of my friends yesterday who's a stockbroker, and he was telling me about this company. I think I told you guys about this company too, and they're making human tissue. Okay, they're computerized making human tissue, and they are just all of a sudden everybody's starting to pay attention to them because so they just signed a huge contract with a company called Merck, and Merck's like the number 4 company in the world in terms of pharmaceuticals, and this company, this little company, decided a big contract with that big company. My point is that they have a production technique that's unique, and because of that, they're going to, at this point, they're going to dominate, or they're dominating the industry that deals with the artificial way of making human tissue. It's an industry. It's a small industry, but it's a very important industry because of all the wonderful things that can happen with it. Okay, so that would be an example of a production technique. Okay, so you have something that you do that nobody else does. And it doesn't always have to be this sexy thing, right? It could be like Walmart, where their production technique was they were huge and they had so much power that they were able to basically tell the suppliers, this is how much we're going to pay, right? Because that's what Walmart does. If you look at the case of Vlasic Pickle, it's like the perfect example of that, where they said, we want the pickles for this price, and that's what we're paying, and then they went to court, whatever. So it's a story you can look into sometime. But they tell the suppliers, this is the price, and they have an amazing distribution system. So there's 2 things that really give them the power. One is their buying power, and the other one is the fact that their distribution system's really good, and that's what gave them their oligopoly or their market power. Okay? So those are the reasons or why that these oligopolies, become oligopolies. That's how it happens, right? Either economies of scale, or mergers, or production techniques, or scarce resources, right? Where we left off is that we're going to start talking about the oligopoly models. And the oligopoly models are all based on this something called a reaction function. It's called a reaction function. And a reaction function just explains the way that company A and company B react to one another. So we have company A and company B. And we'll assume that these are the two dominant companies in this oligopoly structure. And so let's just say they're the only two companies. That makes it easier. So they're a duopoly, right? It's just two companies in this industry. And company A and company B are watching each other because they're the only ones in the industry. And we know that happens because, you always pay attention to your competitors. So what happens here is that in the first model, we assume that company A and company B are very competitive with one another. They are they don't like each other. They're just go at it all the time. Okay, so that's the relationship right now. That's how they react to one another, is they don't like each other. So they're very competitive, and that is called a quasi-competitive model. So in a quasi-competitive model, markets in an oligopoly, quasi-competitive model, we have the firms that are in there act very competitive with one another. Now, what's different about that is that usually with perfect competition, remember we have the demand curve that looks like that. And with perfect competition, that means that they really don't have price setting power. Right? They have to charge the price that the industry gives them. Well, that's not the case with this one. In this example, they have a downward sloping demand curve. So they could charge whatever price they want. So we take company A, we'll say that's their demand curve, and this is what we say is their marginal cost curve. And company B, they have a demand curve that's downward sloping as well. And this is their marginal cost curve. So in each case, they have the ability to charge a higher price if they wanted to, but they're worried about what the other company will do. Because if they raise their price, and this company here is really competitive with them, then if you guys raise their price, right, if company B raise their price, company A is just going to keep their prices the same, and they're going to lose. These guys will end up losing customers. So there's no incentive for them to raise their price if these guys are going to go against them. Right? Because we assume that they're like this quasi-competitive model means that the products are fairly homogeneous. Okay? That means that they're going to be very similar products. You could say Coke and Pepsi. Okay? What's the difference, right? I mean, people who drink Coke like Coke, people drink Pepsi, but a lot of people just don't care. Okay? And they'll just say the difference is small enough where price matters. So if you went to the grocery store and you saw a 12-pack of Coke and it was $4, and you saw a 12-pack of Pepsi and it was $2, you'd probably buy the Pepsi. That's because to you it doesn't make that big of a difference. So price matters. So these companies are very competitive with one another, and price matters. And of course, those two companies are a good example of quasi-competitive. And they would be a great example if they hadn't been caught for price fixing, over 30 times. Okay, so as much as we think they hate each other, they probably collude a lot more than we think they do. Okay? If you got caught doing something 30 times, how many times do you think you really did? Not 30, right? Probably more than that. So they've been caught doing that like over 30 times. But still, you could take a Home Depot and a Lowe's and say, hey, that sounds like a quasi-competitive market. Well, how do we know their prices are low? Well, we know their prices are low because we don't see any more mom and pop hardware stores, right? What happened to them? They're gone. Why are they out of business? There's Home Depot and Lowe's charges lower prices, so we stopped going to those other places because, you know, it was nice and novel for a little while, but the bottom line is we want low prices. Okay, so that would be an example of a quasi-competitive oligopoly market structure. Okay, those two companies dominate the home products, home improvement industry, and so they would be quasi-competitive. So what happens is, in terms of setting prices, these two companies set their prices where marginal cost equals demand. Of course, you know me, this is what I'm going to ask on a test, right? So how do they set prices? They go to where MC equals D. In a quasi-competitive market, they set prices where marginal cost equals demand. So that will put us here at this quantity, oops, a little view. This quantity could be produced here with this company, and this quantity would be produced here with this company. And their prices are basically going to be determined by their marginal cost, right? So they're going to kind of keep their costs low. The lower they can get their products out there for, the lower the prices are going to be. The lower the prices are, the more customers go to them. And now, if you notice, if you go from store one, Home Depot, to Lowe's, what happens is if Home Depot can beat Lowe's, then Lowe's will just say, we'll match your price. Okay? They will make sure that the prices are the same between those two companies. They will make sure, because they don't want you to go to the other one just because it's of a 5% difference. They're going to be like, hey, you know, we'll give you the difference. Just bring in the app, show us it, get it. And they even get online and look at things for you. All right? Because they want your business. So that would be a really good example of quasi-competitive. Okay? So what that ends up being, they takes on the characteristics of a perfect competition model where demand equals marginal cost, you know, price is separate, demand equals marginal cost in perfect competition. The products are fairly homogeneous in perfect competition. The model's very efficient in perfect competition. Right? The only difference is that instead of like a huge number of sellers, in this case there's only two companies, but they act like there's, you know, and there might well be 50 because these two hate each other so much. In fact, we win. We win because if there were more companies in this case, probably the cost would actually be higher. If there were 100 little mom and pop stores around, we probably wouldn't get as low prices as we do with these two big companies because they buy in bulk and get such good deals for us. So we like quasi-competitive, right? Number two. Okay, the second model is called, any questions about that? All right, so takeaways are, you know, things that you see on the notes, okay? The second model is with company A and company B. In this case, they actually join together and act as one.
For quasi-competitive model, is it possible for there to be multiple companies, more than like just one company?
Yeah, there could be more. It's an easier model for me to draw if I'm just doing one thing on company A and company B. But what do you have in mind?
Like I was just wondering restaurants, you know, like how they all have a dollar menu or something like that.
Yeah, and I think that would probably, but restaurants are more monopolistic competition, but you know, that competition you're seeing is exactly like this, but there's more, the numbers are going to have to be like below 8, basically for an oligopoly.
So like more like cell phone companies?
Yeah, more like cell phones. Assuming, if you assume that, you know, do you think cell phone companies act quasi-competitively? I am still not convinced that they couldn't charge lower prices. But maybe it's my conspiracy theory thinking that they could charge, you know, I mean, what data packages and the amounts of they always have the same price, right? AT&T and Verizon always has the same price, and it seems like a high price. But that, again, I have no evidence. What do you guys think? It's a perfect example in terms of being an oligopoly model. I agree with you. Is it a quasi-competitive? Do you think it's super fight? I think the model cell phones will be, it's going to come up later because we have 5 models. I think it's going to be one related. But again, I'm just throwing it out there, right? I mean, I feel like long distance calls used to cost a lot of money, right? Before you guys were born, you know, we had to pay for long distance calls separately. You know, it'd be like 35 cents a minute. And so, you know, people would call up and be like, it's a long distance call, I gotta get off quick. And now it's like, it doesn't matter, right? So, but the whole time, it was probably pretty free for them to do it, but they were charging 35 cents a minute. Because the market would pay, right? If the market pays it, then they can charge a higher price. So, anyway, but you probably could come up with, you know, different ones where there's 2 or 3 or 4 that are really, you know, highly competitive. And then, but are they? Yeah, it's a good point. But obviously, we just do 2. For cartels, they act together. They act like it as if they're a monopoly. So you have 2 companies, but they join together as if there's one. Or there could be more than 2. They join together as if there's one. So with that model, the difference would be that we'll kind of do it like this, where we put in a marginal revenue line here, and then that makes this a little bit different. Okay, so here I'll start over again with the graphs. But with a cartel like is when 2 or more companies will join together and they act as if they're one. So they set all their policies together. They set production together. In other words, they join together and say, this is how much we will produce. There's a demand curve, let's just say for company A's product, a demand curve for company B's product, and then you add them together, and that becomes the demand curve for the industry. Excuse me. All right? So and then there's marginal revenue, and then we have the marginal revenues, and that's the industry marginal revenue. Okay? So this is kind of how it would work here. Is we assume the marginal cost was the same here, the marginal cost is the same here, because it makes it easier if we do that, you know, and we can rationalize it too, and the marginal cost is the same here. So what happens in a cartel model is the way that prices and quantities are set, right? It's the same question that we talked about at the beginning of the semester from day 1, right? We've been talking about the biggest questions that the companies have to ask. Question number 1, what price do we charge? Question number 2, what quantity do we produce? We've been asking that since day 1. So final day, asking the same question. So how do they determine the price that's going to be charged? Well, they go to where marginal revenue equals marginal cost, right here, at the industry level. Go down. Here's the quantity. That's it. See a big. So that's the industry output, and then they go up. And then they determine, and the price is determined from there. So just let me give you an example. Let's look at OPEC. You guys know what OPEC is? What's OPEC do? Manages, well, they kind of do, but they control the world. Well, it's called the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. So OPEC. They control the world's oil supply, or at least they did. Okay, and what happens is OPEC is a group of countries that join together, like Saudi Arabia, and Iraq, and Iran, and Kuwait, and you know, all the other, you know, Nigeria, France, and actually even Venezuela's in it. And all these countries join together, and they formed this thing called OPEC. And OPEC was, for a while, controlling a great amount of the world's supply of oil. So right now, for instance, we, as a world, we consume about 88 million barrels per day. That's about what the world consumes for oil every day. And OPEC, for a while, was controlling the majority of the world's oil supply. Let's just say that they control 65 million barrels per day. Okay, so that was their thing. So they moved together, even though there were all these different countries with all these different agendas. They joined together and they sat at a table, and the way they did it is they'd say, we're only gonna put this much oil out there. We're gonna put out 65 million barrels out there. And nobody does more than that. So guys, this is how we're going to do it, all right? We're going to all join together, and this is how do we figure out who should produce what amount? Well, the way they do that is they go to basically kind of look at this and this, and you'd say, well, this country will produce this amount, and this country will produce this amount, and this country will produce this amount. So we add them all up, and we get to, is that thing of being able to get over his head?
Yeah, it should be fine.
Right, good. Okay, slide a little bit there. Right, and, okay, so the way it works is in terms of who's going to produce what, they just kind of go back to their own country and say, this is what we're going to produce, this is what we're going to produce, this is what we're going to produce, etc. Here's the problem, though, is that some of these countries end up winning and producing a little bit more than they thought they would, and others end up losing and producing a little bit less. Some of them charge a little bit lower price than they wanted, some of them get a little bit higher price than they expected, so it doesn't work out perfect. So these countries have to get an agreement with one another. In fact, they have to have these things called side payments. And the side payments are ways to make each other happy. So if you draw this line across, let's just say this country would like to charge this price, and this country would like to charge this price, and I'll try to draw my line over. But the market price ends up being like that. So in other words, country B would have charged, let's just say, $50 a barrel, and company A would have charged $60 a barrel, but the world price ended up being $55 per barrel. So what happens is they win because they're getting 55 when they thought they'd get 50. They lose because they're getting 55 when they thought they'd get 60. So what ends up happening is company, in this case, company or country B has to make payments to company A, or country A. Okay? It's called side payments, and so it's right here. Okay, it's one of our big things when you're dealing with cartels. Is it has to work out for all of the players. But you see that it doesn't. It's not easy to figure this out. So it takes a lot of negotiating. It takes a lot of cooperation, and you're dealing with countries and companies that typically don't like each other. For example, right? Do you think that they get along really well? Like, do you think Iraq and Iran get along really well? No, right? They were in war against each other for years and years and years. Okay, and they have it's culturally they're different. Okay, they're different types. They're both Muslim countries, but they're different types of Muslims. Okay, and so it'd be like we have the Catholics and the Protestants fighting in Ireland is sort of like that, still Christians, but they have two different sects of it. It's the same thing like that with those two countries. Okay? So that's the problem, is that they don't like each other, and now they're going into this agreement with one another. In Mexico, they have very, very serious and dangerous drug cartels. Has anybody ever been to Mexico lately? Okay. The cartel, do people talk about the cartels a lot, or a little bit, or what? You were in like the vacation. Yeah, you're like hanging out on the beach, and the cartels aren't near those places.
Somebody was beheaded in Haiti with a guy somebody had snitched. That was the story. Somebody had snitched, and so they were hanging underneath this
Doesn't really look. It was
top.
Yeah, and that's the stuff that happens is with these cartels. It takes this cooperation agreement, and you're dealing with typically people who you don't trust, and so it causes a lot of very complex and serious relationship problems. All right, and it's to say the least. So the drug company, so you got drug dealer number one going into business with drug dealer number two, and they say, hey, we'll work this out, and we'll be fair. And you can just imagine each other going, oh yeah, I trust him. Walking away, going, do you trust him? I don't trust him. And then, but somehow they got to do this and make sure, that they both profit, because they can both profit if they were. Right? Now, what happens? And the problem is that sometimes one of the partners in this agreement cheats. And that's a big problem. That's one of the biggest problems with cartels is the fact that one of the members is going to cheat. And why would they cheat is because the same reason that we talked about before with how you can make extra money if you have market power is there's all this area here is a deadweight loss. So all you have to do is produce a little bit more and charge it for a little bit lower price. So have this other customer on the side, produce a little bit more, and you're going to make that extra profit. Because here's your cost down here, here's your price up here. So all you have to do is cheat. And if you don't think that matters, then I was reading an article one time where they're talking about what caused the Persian Gulf War. The Persian Gulf War was Iraq went into Kuwait. It was like 1991, 1990-ish. I think that shit was like, yeah, it was like 1990 when it went in. We joined in, I think, in January of 1991. The United States jumped in. But they went back and had this interview with Saddam Hussein, and they asked him, why he did it, and why he went into Kuwait. He said they cheated on our. Okay, so if you're trying to tell me that this stuff doesn't matter, it changed the whole world when he did that. It changed the entire world because somebody cheated on a cartel agreement. And I've had students in my classes in the past from Saudi Arabia and from Kuwait, and they say the same thing. They say that is true. That's true. I had guys come to me like two years ago after I taught this in class, and he was actually from like Kuwait, and he stopped me and I was like, oh, did I say the wrong thing? And he goes, what you said in class was exactly right. That's exactly what he said we did, right? And now whether he did it or not, I don't know. I kind of trusted what I'm saying, so I don't know. You can't imagine him lying. So probably true, but. Right, but that's what I'm saying. Is this stuff does make a difference. Okay, these agreements make a difference, and if you don't follow up on them, then it blows up. Now, when it blows up back. And what happens now is just to kind of give you staying on the oil market for just a minute. Now what's happening is you would think with oil prices dropping they went from about $100 a barrel down to right now around 50 or slightly over 50, but I'll just say 50. So they cut and oil prices drop in half per barrel. So what do you think OPEC should be doing right now?
Which he should be doing.
Which they should be doing what?
Limiting supply.
Limiting supply. Excellent answer. So if they limit the supply, and they go back, think about it, they go back over this way, and they go, okay, we're going to limit the supply. Instead of this much oil out there, we're going to put this much oil out there, and that's going to cause the prices to go up. That's exactly what they should do. But here's the deal, okay? Over the last couple decades, OPEC has lost their power, a lot of their power. And they're worried because the number one producer in the world right now isn't Saudi Arabia, it's Russia. They're like, yeah, so Russia is producing more oil, and Russia's trying to, they don't care about OPEC, right? They don't care about it. And you know what? The United States has crept up too. We're probably number 3 now, and so you have the U.S. producing more and more oil per day. And so now OPEC is down to about 40% of the world's oil supply comes from OPEC. So it's more like this, maybe a little less, right? I mean, a little bit more. So let's just say 36 out of that. Okay? So that OPEC's power has fallen, which is good for us, and that's one of the reasons why oil prices have fallen, is because they just decided at their last meeting, at least the last one I saw, like a month ago, that they're just going to keep producing. They don't care because they're worried if they stop, if they'll lose all their customers to the new ones coming online. The United States is getting to the point where they're a lot more self-sufficient. But with the United States, our problem with oil is we can't bring this problem. We sell our oil domestically. In other words, if we produce it here, we have to keep it here. Right? The United States companies aren't allowed at this point to sell their oil on the worldwide market. So, you know, you can have a debate about whether that's a good thing or not. But my point is, we aren't importing as much, right? So that makes a difference in the world market because there's one less big buyer out there in the world market. So that brings the world price down anyway. We've got the biggest buyer, you know, where we were buying 8 to 12 million barrels per day. Now we're not. You know, we're a little bit less than that. So it's taken away a huge demand. Okay, so all that said to deal with these cartels. One more thing on the cartel front is the concept of cheating. And because it is one of the biggest things that you know has to happen. Everybody has to stick with this agreement. But cheating it's the way it works is there's an incentive to cheat. So let me just kind of give you a box here and say, okay, we have 4 possible scenarios. Company A and Company B enter into a cartel agreement. And they both, let's say in scenario number 1, they both, neither cheats, okay? They stick to their agreement. Okay, so Company A doesn't cheat, Company B doesn't cheat. And in this scenario here, they both cheat. Company A cheats, and Company B cheats. In this scenario here, Company A cheats, and Company B doesn't cheat. And here, we're going to say Company A doesn't cheat, and Company B does. So there's 4 possible things that can happen. Now, just kind of give you an idea how it will work. All right, if neither of them cheat, we're just going to say that they both make $10 million. Okay, so both make 10 million. If both of them cheat, they both make 5 million. If A cheats and B doesn't, then A will make 12 million and B will make 2 million. And if B cheats and A doesn't, then they'll make 12 million and they'll make 2 million. So what's the incentive for one of these companies to do? Okay. So if you cheat, what has to happen for you to win? Huh? If you cheat, how do you win? Yeah. Exactly. So if you cheat, you don't get caught. And if you get caught, then you're going to lose, right? Because if they cheat and you cheat, then you've been better off if neither of you cheated. But if you cheat and you get away with it, then you make more money than you would have made on your own. You see the problem here? So what would you do? All right. And yes, I know this can apply to relationships too, right? Absolutely, right? Because and you might think to yourself, if I cheat and I get away with it, then you win. But if you cheat and they cheat, then you both lose. And you can get into a relationship where that happens, and so you gotta be. So what is the right answer here? If you catch them.
What are we talking about?
If you catch them, then.
If you get all the money.
No. This doesn't work like that in the real world, right? No, you cheated, give me all that money back. Okay. No, it doesn't work like that. So what relationship, right? And you got a deal, a business deal, all right, with Patrick, okay? Right, okay? And what's the best thing for you to do?
Cheat.
Patrick's like, okay, cross him off. What do you think the best thing to do would be?
Well, if he cheats and I don't, I lose
Okay.
8 million.
Right. So what do you do? What would you do? I'm not saying what did he do, but first let's just say, let's start with you instead of the cheater. Who I will be watching on the next class. Now, what would you do?
Well, I would have to see what he's doing first.
And while you're watching, are you cheating?
Most likely no.
Okay.
But if I see he does, then it's me to do as well.
I'm just saying, like,
Go ahead.
you're not like grasping in my head. Like, you catch them and you like, you know,
Yeah, you
get all the money.
No, you don't get all the money. That's not working. They have these extra customers. They're not going to just give you the money. They don't like you, right? They just,
I'm thinking like wild dogs.
you're thinking, yeah.
There's no more competition.
Right, it doesn't work like that. In the business world, you can't hold it on to their heads. You just, you know, you have to just live with the fact that you made a mistake or didn't, you know, go into business.
Can't imagine swing it the other way around. Well, in the real world, there's probably both cheating anyways. So it's better for you both to cheat. If somebody like pulls a wolf in your eye, you're gonna end up with 2 million. Serious, so.
All right. Well, the economic answer, okay, maybe not the real life answer, but the economic answer is don't cheat. Don't cheat. If they cheat, then what?
Take it
Then
out.
you cheat, right? But if your job, you guys both go into business and go, I'm not going to cheat, and you go, I'm not going to cheat, but I'm going to keep an eye on them. Yeah, but I'm going to keep an eye on them. And then at the end of the day, nobody's cheating. And guess what? As a whole, you're maximizing out. You're maxed out at 20 million bucks between you, and you're happy. Okay? Because all it would have gained a little bit, but you would have lost because as soon as he found out, then he would have gone into business. He would have done the same thing, and you would have both lost. Half the profits would have been gone. And the reason I say that is because if you're both cheating, in this case, you're overproducing oil, right? So that's going to bring the market price down, so you're both going to lose profit. So that's the problem here, okay? And so you go into agreement, relationship, don't cheat. That's the lesson of the day. Don't cheat, okay? And you'll both be happier, right? You'll both be more profitable together, right? And I don't know. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. I think it makes sense. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay. The third market structure. So everybody okay with that? So just kind of going through this. We've gone through all these. If you just let me just take a look or a quick look at this. This is the cartel model. This is okay. So here are the problems with it. Number 1 problem, it's illegal. Number 2 problem, side payments are difficult. Number 3 problem, there's incentives to cheat. And number 4 problem, that the relationship between these two people, these two groups, these two countries, these two companies is going to be very complex. Remember, these are people who were your competitors, who you didn't really necessarily like, but you realize if you joined together, you'd be better off and stronger together than you would be apart. Okay, this isn't marriage. Okay, marriage is different. Okay.
The other reason why I'm thinking about with this question of country for old men, so all I'm thinking about right now.
You just what?
No country for old men.
What is
Tommy
that?
Jones. What? Has anybody seen this movie? No country for old men? Okay, it's just drugs, shooting people, and trying to do the last man standing.
Yeah. Well, it's again, okay, so the next model, no country for old men. Never heard of it.
What?
Never heard of it.
It is actually very
It's not like I don't know anything about a price leader model, the difference, the relationship, remember, it's all about how these companies react to one another, right? And in this case, the way they react is company A is the leader and company B is the follower. So company A is the one that dominates the industry, that sets the price, that basically sets their own quantity, maximizes their profit, and all the other companies in this case are called the fringe. So we have the fringe firms and then we have the leader. So leader is the one who controls the market. So who's the leader and do we have good examples of? Yeah, clearly. I mean, we looked at our market structures the last class when I was giving you like percentages. I mean, Nike you could say is a price leader, right? I mean, who leads the footwear, the sneaker industry in the United States? Nike. Who leads is there a leader in the cigarette industry? Or who is it? Philip Morris, right? There's a company that dominates, and when they dominate, they're considered to be the leader. Okay? So we have really good examples of a price leader type of situation. And there's a really amazing graph. I wish I thought that could be popular. But this is the graph for this model. And the way I want you to read this graph is that you kind of have to figure these two kind of take out of your minds for a little minute, right? So don't think about this one or this one. So focusing on this line and this line. That's a demand curve for the leader and a marginal revenue curve for the leader. So demand and the marginal revenue for the leader, and here's the leader's marginal cost. So if you just focus on demand, marginal cost, marginal revenue, right, then you get that the leader is going to maximize their profit by going to where MR equals MC, go up to find the price, and go down to find the quantity. So in the price leader model, the leader is going to do basically what the leader wants to do to maximize their own profit. And the rest of the companies in the industry, called the fringe, are going to get the remainder of the industry's demand. So in this case, the demand that's left is from here to here. So let's just say that's 80 and that's 100. That means that the leader would produce 80% of the output, and the rest of the companies would do 20%, and that would add up to 100% of the output. Okay, I'm just making out the 80 and 100, but I mean 80 and 20. But that's the thing. So this amount goes to what are called the fringe firms, right? That's the supply curve for the industry, and this is the supply curve for the fringe firm, and then this is the demand curve for the industry. So that's kind of how it works. The prices are low enough in that case because the leader is they're very efficient. The reason they're the leaders is because they're good. And here's the thing. If a company's going to take on a leader, they have to be ready to take on a leader. All right? Look at what AT&T did about 2 years ago with Verizon. They went at it with Verizon. And really, I think they got their butts kicked. Because they were trying to prove that they had better coverage worldwide or nationwide than Verizon. And anybody, you could look at a map and see a color, right? We saw that Verizon was right, and AT&T went at it hard and really pushed it and tried to take on Verizon, and I don't think they won. I think they got their butts kicked. Okay, and so you got to know what you're doing when you go after the leader. Now, in the old days, for instance, United used to be the top airline. They were the leader of the airline industry. Now it's Southwest. Okay, so it's not like the leader can't change, but you have to have something, you have to be doing something better to be able to compete with the leader. Is that?
Southwest prices are just issues, right?
Yeah, and the way that Southwest did it, originally they're charging for bags, right? And we'll give you a low price, but you get to carry one bag on, and nobody did that in Southwest. Now everybody does that. Now everybody's trying to copy Southwest's model because it's, they're winning, right? But you can't go after the leader unless you're ready to go after the leader. Yes.
Is Southwest just the leader domestically? Because I thought Delta was the
Yeah, well, we just showed it last time up here in the U.S. market. They're the top one. Okay, I don't know if I would call them the leader of the overall leader, but they're leading now. It's not United anymore. United used to be like a leader, right? There was a lot of research done on airline industry for a long time. United's kind of the dominant one, and they're just not anymore. And I think that's my point is that the leaders can change. They don't always have to be the same one. But you have to have something that makes you better to compete with the leader. Right? We see it in sports all the time, right? Nobody mess with this, nobody wants to play against this team or this team. There's always that leader. And then it changes, right? Personnel changes, something changes. When we see it a lot of times. Okay, so that's the that's the way it works in this industry. All right. So any questions? So from your end, the questions that I'll ask you would be like, how are prices determined in the price leader model? How are they determined? Is the leader a price taker or a price setter? Are the fringe firms price takers or price setters? Price takers, okay? So the leader's going to maximize their own profit, and they're going to get their, and everybody else is going to follow. Okay, good? Everybody okay with that? All right. And the next model, the next two models are very easy. In fact, all I'm going to really do on these models is just give you some examples and explain the definition. Okay, so the next two models are called the Cornell and the Bertrand. So the Cornell model is when firms will determine the quantities that are produced and let the market determine the price. And the oil market was one that kind of would replicate that. You can say it, right, in some ways. But because if they control the quantity, right, and you can put the quantity lower, then the price will be higher. So what happens, like a good market, maybe not the best oligopoly example market, but a good market where that happens is agriculture. If you think about agriculture, there's a quantity out there, right? They produce a certain amount of corn or wheat or barley or whatever, and that quantity is there. And then they let the world market determine the price. So the quantity is there. They can't even change the quantity. You can't say, hey, all of a sudden, hey, the price of corn is really high, let's produce more corn. By the time you do it, it's like 4 months later, and it's too late. So that quantity is set, and then the market is determined from the demand, okay, in the industry. Okay, so what happens here is that the quantity is put out there, and then people will say, this is the price we'll pay. With the Bertrand model, it works the opposite way. The Bertrand model is the price that is paid is set, and then the quantities are determined afterwards. So there's so many really good examples of this. I think doctors are a good example, especially the good doctors, right? You'd say you're going for some procedure, and they say it's going to cost you $500 for the procedure. So the price is set. Then you got it, and then at that point, it's up to you to determine, whether or not they want you. Whether or not you want them. Okay, so they put a price out there. Say, the plumber said, it's $80 for me to step into your house. I don't care if all I have to do is flush your toilet. The lowest you're going to pay is $80. And then for every hour after that, it's $70. That's Bertrand. Okay? The lawyer says, it's going to be $300 per hour for my services. You want me? This is what you pay. Right? Robert Downey Jr. says, I want $80 million for Avengers, whatever, 2 it is, right? And by the way, I already have the tickets. Okay. Next Thursday. So yes, I did. Okay. It's next Thursday. Right? So this is what you want me, this is how much you pay. You got it? So that's what this market is. It's like, here's what it costs for this doctor's appointment. Here's what it costs for this lawyer. Here's what it costs for this actor. Here's what it costs for this athlete, right? Like LeBron James last summer. This is what I want. This is what I'm going to get. Who wants me? right? I'm putting the price out there, now we'll figure out who wants it. And that's how it works in this model. It's really kind of, but you can see that in order to do that, you have to have market power, right? Yeah, not that, like, you know, because we can walk away. I walked out of a doctor's appointment last week, because I got to the front and they said it's $75 for a copay. I said, $75? I said, you guys called me? Called me and said, here's my, you know, asked me and said, you guys be charging? I said, okay. And I walked out. $75. Like for a copay, which means, you know, they're attacking you. So you're not that important. Okay. I'm sorry, but I'm not going to do that. And so, you know, that's their price. It's my prerogative to walk away. Okay? And I could say the same thing about any of these Bertrand examples. This is how much you're charging. We have the opportunity to say yes or no. And sometimes you have to say this, right? I mean, if you're a company, you have to say yes. But you know what I mean? So that's okay. So that's the final market structure, the final oligopoly model. Now, what I will do on the test is I will give you an example. Like I'll give you like let's say. I'll give you an industry. Let's say I go, okay, the soft beverage industry. Soft beverage. What type of market structure, what type of oligopoly model best fits the soft beverage industry? And you have to pick one of the five. So we'll say quasi-competitive would be the right answer. The oil industry. Cartel. The diamond industry. Cartel. The cigarette industry. Cigarette industry. Who dominates what happens in the cigarette industry? One company's got like 50-60% market, right? Price leader. Right? The sneaker industry. Price leader. The agricultural industry. Cornell, right? The lawyers. So I'm going to give you five. You'll have five different ones from the person next to you. And you're going to have to just pick one, or if you don't know anyone, just put quasi-competitive all the way down to get one right. Okay, so that's one way for me to ask those questions. All right, so that's you'll have a question on there about advertising. I will ask you a question about advertising and the different market structures. And you know, it's not going to be like in perfect competition, you could say, yes, there is no advertising. Why not? Because if you advertise, you can't charge a higher price anyway, so all it's going to do is cause costs to rise, so you're going to lose money by advertising. That's what it would be like. Okay? Or it might be monopolistic competition, should you advertise? Absolutely. You have to find a way to differentiate your product and get customers to be loyal to you, so you would advertise. What about cartel? How would there be advertising there? Would cartels advertise? The answer would be yes, they would advertise, but they'd advertise together, because they do everything together. Right? Would quasi-competitors advertise? Think about it. Would a Home Depot and a Lowe's advertise? Yes, they advertise because they're fighting against each other. Okay, so you're going to get some questions like that, and we're going to have about, whatever, I already wrote the note number, but I think you'll have about 40 multiple choice questions and a pretty good amount of practice and short answers. I have an older test here, and take a quick look. There'll be questions about cheating, right? Whether or not you should cheat. Okay, so just look at the person next to you and answer that one. Okay, just remember, you guys, that the stuff that we covered on like the marginal revenue, marginal cost, and things like that, those transfer over. Even though it wasn't from this test, there was some stuff that's going to, It's implicit. We've been talking about it. We've talked about it here, marginal cost. So it's in this too. So just make sure that you do a good job studying that stuff as well. Your quiz is a good thing to look at. And if you have any questions, I will be in my office probably a little bit tomorrow morning, a lot on Monday, a lot on